Welcome back, rockers and fellow horse nerds. Okay, we are back on the half halt. If you remember in our first video that we did on this, we were talking about the 18th century version of it with Monsieur François Robichon de la Guérinière showing us that it's an action of the inside hand with the fingernails coming up like this. And we talked about why, because he was using curved bits, because of a thousand reasons, and they all make perfect sense. And they do carry on over into our modern riding today, even with snaffles, if we look at them as a way to, if you like, support one side of the horse while softening the other side of the horse, which is effectively what he's talking about. If you haven't seen that, go back and watch that one. But at the end of that first video, we asked the question, at what point did the half halt become a sort of dogma that you're using an inside leg to an outside rein? And I've got Herr Richard Williams here, who is the publisher of Xenophon Press. You've got to know Xenophon Press, and no, they don't sponsor this video series, but my God, do I rely on these books, and my God, have I learned so much from the old dead dude stuff. So thank you very much to Mr. Williams for devoting his life to the thankless task, frankly, of publishing these books that only the nerds like us buy. All right, so we were then casting around to try and find out at what point did it become about the inside leg to the outside rein. And it seems to have been with this chap here, Herr Gustav Steinbrecht, which is about 100 years after La Guérinière. He's writing in the 1830s to the 1840s and so on. He says it's about softening the horse with your and supporting the horse with your inside leg, and then doing this action on the outside rein, making sure that the horse is always engaged behind and that the shoulders are always free and moving forward. Now, this is two reins. La Guérinière was talking about one rein with a curb. So clearly, Monsieur Steinbrecht is talking about the portion of the horse's training that Monsieur La Guérinière would have said is not the dressage, is actually the débourrage. It's the preparation point where you're still using a snaffle for the dressing of the horse, which in Monsieur La Guériniere's idea would be now with the curb. That would be the final phase. So this is where it can get confusing, because if you don't know how to interpret what these guys are saying, then it's hard to know when to do what. So clearly we've got Herr Steinbrecht here working in either a snaffle or a double bridle, which is a preparation for the curb. And he's now separating the two hands and the two legs and doing a diagonal aid. Okay, so it seems to start here in the 19th century. I would like to turn it over to Mr. Williams, because Mr. Williams is not only a publisher of the old dead dudes, but he's also a very, very proficient horse trainer and rider himself. And he and I have been working together, playing with ponies the last week together, having a great time and exploring all these conversations about these different types of equestrianism. So, Richard, when you're training your people and your ponies, how do you go from an inside aid, which is what La Guérinière is talking about here, to a diagonal aid? What's the process? What's the value? What are the pitfalls? What do people need to watch out for? And what are they actually trying to achieve with this?
Yeah, it's kind of a long question, so I'll try not to be too verbose. So the first thing that I think has to be established is that any rider should not be asking or trying to deliver a half halt before they have a balanced seat. So this is why in the old schools in Europe, well, it's not we can't take this for granted, but it used to be that when I started riding, I don't know what happened to you, but whether that was your experience, but I was not really allowed to touch the reins for about 18 months.
For me, it was 500 years.
Yeah. I was like lunged with no reins, maybe, and not even SOS strap. but holding the pommel and, learning to balance my seat in the movement of the horse with no ability to rely on the reins. So I had to seek my own balance through the muscles in my torso and through uprighting myself. So only if the rider themselves are in balance, relative balance on the horse, can that balanced rider on the horse even presume to rebalance a horse that's falling out of balance.
So go get lunged, lads, by someone who's good.
Lunge lessons.
And here's the other thing, lunge lessons, don't let your instructor, got to do instructor management here, don't let your instructor send you really, really fast forward, because all you'll do is clamp and go, oh shit, I don't want to fall off. And that will have the opposite effect. If you're going to be lunged softly. Top tip.
Yeah, on a nice, slow, reliable horse that has a range of motion. What I would do for my, not to digress, but what I would do for my students is I would have a voice-trained horse, and I would have the horse do the transitions, very simple transition, walk, trot, a little bit more trot, a little bit less trot, walk, slower walk, bigger walk, and not really warn the rider. So the rider has to feel this slight change in velocity.
But never too much velocity.
Never too much.
Yeah.
And they hear me, but they don't have, 5 minutes warning. They have, 2 seconds, 3 seconds warning. And these little tiny shifts create the independently balanced seat. So that's the number one. We shouldn't be giving a rider, in your first lesson, we're going to teach you how to half halt. Because it's not really fair. Because it will not be done well.
Right, there's no stability from which to half halt.
Right.
Yeah.
So you have to have, a softly anchored seat that is joined to the horse's center of gravity, not separated. The second thing, and de la Guerinière is credited with inventing the shoulder in, or at least describing it. Okay? Describing
and
it.
And emphasizing it.
Right. And naming it the word, this word shoulder in. Other people said head in, haunches out.
Or two tracks.
Or head to the center of the circle, haunches to the outside of the circle. But he was the one who actually took this movement and put it along a straight line. At least he's the one who he recorded it. So, and then we have other great masters that I'm not going to argue with, like Nuno Oliveira and so on, that the shoulder in is the alpha and omega, meaning the first and the last exercise. It should be your go-to exercise. And then
he calls it the aspirin of riding. It fixes everything.
Well, actually, Nuno called it the aspirin of riding.
Yes,
right. And de la Guerinière says it's the alpha and omega, the first and the last exercise. So when you're not sure what to do,
because Legone didn't have aspirin. That's true.
Right. And I often say this to my students. So if you're the trainer of this horse, and by the way, you're sitting in the saddle, what exercise would you recommend to help you with this issue? And I get a small smile on my face, and this is their cue to always say the answer, shoulder in.
Yeah.
Right? So,
and you could argue that the Steinbrecht interpretation of the half halt is like a nanosecond of shoulder in, effectively.
Not longer than a nanosecond, because the problem with the description when a riding teacher today says inside leg to outside rein is what they're often not telling, or they're skipping over this section, is that the horse has to be put in la position. He has to be put in the position of a mild shoulder for...
Assume the position.
Yeah, so the horse has to be put in this position of not being arrow straight.
Yeah.
So he has to be, that means that he has to be curved. If we're saying to the right, he's curved to the right, then what you're doing in the shoulder in is you are lining up the horse's left front leg in front of the path of his right hind leg, and correct for Steinbrecht to say, aid with your inside leg to encourage the horse to step a little bit deeper under the center of gravity. But to do the half halt on the outside rein, you must have the indirect hand position on the inside rein, and you have to have the horse filling up an enveloping outside rein. So we can't have a straight stick contact on the outside rein.
Quick question.
We have to have that rein filled up.
When you say just think we need to clarify this for the lads. When you say indirect rein, are we talking about this action?
Yes.
Okay, so this is really important, guys. If you remember in the first video, we were talking about La Guérinière, really emphasizing this action here.
And his description of it is that you turn the fingernails slightly upward.
Right. So this is still relevant when we're getting to Steinbrecht, and what Richard just said about this indirect inside rein, which is going to help soften the horse and allow him to have this enveloping outside rein. It's still an action like this. And what's really tough for you all, and it was tough for me, is this is really only taught in a very, very few schools. Most people are taught to do this or even this, and this will never work. All that one tends to see is people getting stuck for like 25 years at shoulder in and not a very good shoulder in because of this action. So this thing here, which we talked about in the previous video, still has relevance, an indirect rein. That's what Mr. Williams is calling it. Just want to clarify that so you can interpret what he's saying correctly.
But I think they should have the benefit of what you and I talked about last night, because we talked about this indirect rein. So if we're holding the reins like this and riding along, then when we take the hand from its starting position and we make it an indirect rein, why are we calling this an indirect rein? If we draw the line, and it would be kind of helpful if we had a bridle, if we draw the line from the rein to the horse's mouth and we're riding like this, then the horse's bit is in direct communication with your finger. Wherever the rein comes through, it comes through here or here, doesn't matter. But the first thing that the horse's mouth feels is your hand. And when you turn your fingernails slightly upward, then this lays about between 12 and 14 inches of surface area of rein up against the horse's neck, because you're narrowing the contact when you turn from here to here. So now the horse's mouth feels the friction of this long piece of leather on his own neck and his own hair, and that is what he feels first. So he feels in his mouth himself. And only indirectly does he actually feel you. And if you have done this soft turning of your hand and not retracted, okay, and not pulled back.
It's very difficult to go against the instinct to pull back.
To do some kind of bigger effort. It's a very soft kind of a lazy turn.
It's
but
just
what
keeping
you're
it where it is. Yeah.
You're looking for is this giant surface area. You're trying to maximize surface area of rein against the side. And the name for this rein in de la Guerinière, in the French edition, before it gets translated, is called appui, A-P-P-U-I.
Support, that means support in French.
And unfortunately, this support rein, rather than thinking of lateral support, people think of it as longitudinal support, as in pulling or giving the horse something to lean on, as opposed to something supporting from the side. And I think this. So what I do when I teach my riders, I say, when we furl right here, you don't have any, but there are 11s. These are called the knurling marks, right? Okay,
I beg your pardon, sir.
So I say, your 11s before you have your Botox. So the rider, and I use this.
How did you know I was going for my Botox?
You were late for it. Okay, so if we put our thumbs up and we make the number 11, and then we put the thumbs down, and then the way I teach it is, okay, and I teach this to women a lot so they can completely relate. They're very aware of their 11s. So if I take my 11s and then make an italic 11 with the thumbs slanted to the side, now I am in position right. This leaves my hands, this hand about one finger's height higher, and I'm slightly slanted. So these fingernails are upward, like de la Guerinière says, and these fingers are a little bit downward. And then when I go to neutral, this is neutral, and when I go to left position, then my 11s are backward slanted. italic handwriting. And I just use this very, very soft turning. Yeah. So that, because as you, if you just leave this hand here and you only turn here, this inside hand, you have to turn more than if you have to turn here. So if we do this slight exaggeration of the direct rein on the outside and the indirect rein on the inside, then you don't have to turn so much. You don't have to turn your palm completely up. So we're just making this soft adjustment. So this is positioning
I
left.
can also see that when you do that, you don't get braced in the shoulder.
Right.
Yeah.
And we don't want to be in a contortion.
Yeah,
we don't want to go. We don't want to torque ourselves too far.
And then get the hands out of position.
Right.
Yeah.
So when I do this with this inside rein, the right rein being the inside rein, what I'm asking the horse to do is a little bit soften in the jaw and stretch the muscle behind his left ear and get it a little bit longer. Relax in the inside jaw and feel confident in the inside contact, because why? He's not in contact with me anymore. He's in contact with his own neck. So his lips are sort of getting a mouth massage from his own neck. He's getting this, and he's not in contact with an unidentified flying object, namely the rider's hand.
And he's not being opposed.
And he's not being opposed.
Also, what I think, what Steinbrecht is always saying is that you don't want to impede your horse's shoulder movement,
right,
and you don't want to impede your horse's hind leg movement. And then, of course, there is this problem that can happen where if there's a big rushing forward of the shoulders, and we're going to get in our next video, by the way, into the arrival of the big warm blood coming out of cart horses mixed with hot bloods, and therefore a big pushing shoulder where people do suddenly start to encounter this problem. But Steinbrecht is actually before this. The warm blood hasn't really been developed yet. It's sort of on its way a little
Still
bit.
more thoroughbreds.
More thoroughbredy. And the first, just to be super nerdy, the first kind of warm bloods that we think of as the Trakehners, they are kind of Germany's answer to the thoroughbred in the 18th century. It was Frederick the Great he's the big 18th century king who's also fighting for gay rights, by the way, and and taking on Catherine the Great and kicking butt all over Europe in various ways, and sort of being a musician at the same time. But he establishes this stud farm at Trakehners, which is in East Prussia, I think it's now actually in part of Poland, and he is noticing that the English are breeding these thoroughbreds, and he's like, oh, these horses are quite handy actually, because if you use them as military horses, they can jump things and go really fast, as well as spinning and stopping, turning on a dinner plate, which is what his cavalry generals always said you needed to do in battle. So the Trakehners horse is very similar to a thoroughbred in many ways. These big warm bloods don't come until later. So just remember that you need to interpret what kind of horse these guys were using. So Steinbrecht would have been dealing with thoroughbreds, Trakehners, lighter types of horse. So he's very careful to say you don't want to oppose them. You want to have them flow through, but they are kind of hot. Yeah. So we need to have something to kind of regulate them and soften them, because they're also kind of like a little bit in the head like this. We need to soften them. So really what they're talking about is kind of the half halt giving pleasure to the horse, making the horse feel, rather than, this isn't really talked about. And when you're looking at, say, the training scale, that rather tyrannical thing that we're all made to follow, there is a bit which everyone seems to skip over, which is the second rung of that pyramid, which is the one that says relaxation. Right. Relaxation is like, well, we can kind of dispense with that as long as we're kind of going forward in this really energetic way. But if one does dispense with relaxation, well, the whole enterprise becomes kind of punitive, really, both for the horse and the rider. And I think that really what you're talking about here, and which I think what Mr. Steinbrecht is talking about, is you're talking about not just softening a horse through that kind of half halt, but actually giving him a joyful, pleasurable, calming down, parasympathetic nervous system experience, right? Yeah, that's what you're talking about.
So to go back,
you're de-stressing the horse.
Right.
Yeah.
So to go back to how do you get this inside leg to outside rein half halt to happen? First, you have to have in the débourrage, or in the young training of the horse.
Débourrage is before the dressage, right? The preparation of the horse.
You have to have done this little explaining of the vocabulary to the horse. So, for example, if I activate you with my right leg, I want to feel that generates a bit of a thrust or a stepping under from the right hind leg, and I want to be able to moderate that. I want to be able to taper that or caress that or adjust that with the right rein. So I want the energy generated by my right leg coming through the horse's body and then adjustable, or I could stretch it, I could compress it, I could verify it with my right rein. Then I need the same, and I do that while tracking right. Then I need to do the same thing when I generate energy, activate the horse's left hind leg into the left rein. When I have, so let's stay tracking right. Once we have felt that we energized or had the right hind leg step under the weight and I feel it in the right rein, then I reward the horse as he's elongated his left neck, and I transfer this ipsilateral aid from inside leg to inside rein to an inside leg to outside rein. And I make this diagonal aid only a function of the inside lateral aid.
So can I just see if I can recap that in a for dummies way? What you're basically saying is, in order to get the horse and the rider to understand the diagonal aid, the diagonal softening, like moment of shoulder in to soften and bring back to balance while moving forward thing that I think we're agreeing that Mr. Steinbrecht is talking about with his half halts, you actually need, you're saying that you're training your horse and your human to first go inside leg to inside rein and outside leg to outside rein and get softening effects that way without interfering with the horse. And then if they can get that right, then you can say, okay, now let's do inside leg to outside rein. Now let's diagonalize it.
Correct.
Like there's a process to this, right?
So,
okay.
So why? Why do we think we have to do diagonal aids?
Tell me.
So why? Because if we think about the way, if we do the analysis, and every book out there, every basic riding book always tells you the sequence of the footfall. So, for example, Badaiski's Complete Training of Horse and Rider, they will do the 1, 2, 3, 4 and the 1, 2, 1, 2. The trot, the trot, in the trot, the horse's left front and right hind are diagonal pairs. They work as a team.
Got it.
So the entire 1,200 pounds of the horse at this moment is shared between the left front and the right hind. It's either a 50-50 sharing or it's not a 50-50 sharing. It could be 60% on the forehand and 40% on the haunch. But while the other diagonal is up in the air, there's only two legs holding the horse up. So what you are doing in shoulder in is you're taking, or shoulder four, is you're bringing that left shoulder in the path of the right hind leg. So now we are saying on this diagonal vector or axis, we can now decide, we notice right now, if we had scales under the horse's feet and we had like pressure scales for this moment, and we said 600 pounds on the left front and only 400 pounds on the right hind, then we should be able to say to the horse, hey, you know, this is not so great for you. I'm going to now, with my upper body, shift our weight package towards the right hind and maybe take some weight.
Package, so.
Well, it's a combined weight package, right? It's the rider.
Absolutely.
Now it's not just the 1,200 pounds of the horse.
True.
It's the 1,200 pounds plus the 120 pounds plus or minus of the rider. So we're at 1,320, 1,350. And we're saying to that horse, hey, this isn't so great for your front legs. Let's shift some of that weight back. So this is why you have to have the reaction and the You have to have the reaction and the readiness of the horse to respond to your inside leg, to willingly step under the weight when it feels the weight shift back towards. So when there's a half halt on the inside rein, on the outside rein, it's always with a little bit inside shoulder back. And inside,
without the hands coming out of position.
Yeah, without the hands. So
and this indirect rein effect.
Yeah,
on
so
the
you're going to
rein.
feel like your inside arm needs to actually be longer when you lean back a little bit with the inside shoulder, because you're shifting the weight to the haunch. And at the same time, you're feeling with your thigh and with your weight, how much has the horse's haunch accepted that weight? How can you tell? How can you tell that the haunch has accepted the weight? This is how you tell. Behind you, if you feel that the back is stiffening or rising, it has not accepted the weight. Or if the strides have shortened. So if you feel that the horse behind you, especially on this right side, and we're siding this for today, if it went down a little bit, if the strides got softer, if your up and down movement, let's say we're in the trot, gets squishier as opposed to harder.
That's the correct dressage term, squishy.
Squishy is a technical term. If you feel these, if you find that the horse is now softer in the rein and not heavy in the rein, these are all signs that you've been successful.
Perfect.
So I know I kind of went over, but I think my big point here is that you can't just put the inside leg on and half halt with the outside rein.
Yeah.
You cannot do that if you're not putting the horse into the position of a curved outside rein contact.
For which you need your balanced and secure seat. So, all right. So that was pretty fascinating. We have gone in 2 videos from Monsieur la Guérinière, who's telling us we're doing this in a long curve bit, just with the inside hand or just the single bridle hand, with an action like this, being a half halt, and there being different types of intensity that you would need for different types of horse personality, to 100 years later, Mr. Steinbrecht saying, well, now he's doing a preparation of the horse with 2 hands, 2 reins, and using one to soften, one to balance, and therefore the inside leg to the outside rein, a bit of shoulder in moment, but always to soften. And then we had Richard explaining how you can use an indirect rein, which is still a bit of la Guérinière, to help with all of this, but the various conditions that are needed for that, and to keep in mind that we're not trying to put the brake on the horse. No, we're just trying to actually soften, give balance, have him enjoy his work. So here's the question, and we're going to go to this in the next video. When did the impression of the half halt, or the expression of the half halt, become about cranking the handbrake and going brum with the gas pedal of the inside leg? Because that is what one tends to see now. When did that corruption happen? So make sure you go to the next one. We'll talk about when that was and how we avoid it. Yes, sir.
Yeah, and I would just leave my final thought, in case it wasn't crystal clear, is that whenever the rider delivers an aid, the thinking must always be, what must I be doing with my weight aid? This is the first thing that you have to think.
Rider's aids, 80% weight, lads, 80% weight.
Because you always weigh something, and from the horse's point of view, because he or she is carrying you, you never become weightless until you dismount. So the horse is confronted with your weight, so you must always be asking, where am I and how am I placing my weight, and how do I shift my weight, and in which direction to effect a change? So the weight aid, the directionality of the weight aid, even though it's subtle, is super important. The second question is, do I have a leg aid that supports my intention? And if I do, where is that leg and how do I apply it?
So let's do that in the next video.
And the third aid is, how can my hand refine, embellish, and beautify,
polish,
verify, polish the efforts of my seat and my leg.
Perfect.
So
All
that's
right.
this is kind of like a little mantra.
Well, and this is the exact question we need to address in the next video, because we know that things have gone to a kind of misinterpretation of the half halt, and we need to get to how we're going to do what you're talking about there. Lads, if this was useful, if this was informative, if this was entertaining, make sure you like it. It helps the algorithm to help us, to help you get more of this good old dead dude stuff to you. Hit the subscribe button too, that really helps as well. If you would like to learn how to do this with the in-hand work particularly, really super important, learning how to balance your horse like that, you see there's a little free course clicky thing down there, there's a link, click on that. And then if you want to come with us and actually work with our horses where we live, you're welcome to come and do that too. You'll find on that website, longridehome.com, there's an email link to us. Just shoot us an email and we can make a plan. Come and play with our ponies. It's a lot of fun. And don't forget, Xenophon Press. Why Xenophon Press? And they do not sponsor this video series, although we'd love them to, but they don't, because we rely on these texts. And this poor dude here, look, he's starving to death. If you don't buy his books, somebody's got to publish these things. And I can tell you that publishing books is not easy, right? The poor dude, he has to make a living doing other things. Yet he relentlessly puts these beautiful, amazing, reliable old texts in front of us. By the way, really cheaply and affordably, thank you. They're not like academic publishing.
A lot of our books we do in 2 editions.
Yeah.
We'll do maybe a color hardcover edition, and then we'll do, you know, the kind of paperback that you're able to just take to the barn and make notes and get grubby, get saddled.
I hate to give you a visual, but this one lives in my loo.
Yeah, this is
I read this all the time on the loo.
thumbed through version. Yeah.
So, Xenophon Press, lads. All right, so like, subscribe, and see you on the next one.